year was 1995, a full year before Scream was released, and horror was in a weird place. Looking at the horror releases of 1995, it seemed that the studios were throwing anything and everything at the wall to see what sticks, and we see such random assortment of late franchise sequels, creature features, and many ill-fated originals from prominent directors including Clive Barker, Stuart Gordon, John Carpenter, and even the man Wes Craven himself with Vampire in Brooklyn in 1995.
Come on!
Brooklyn. I love this place.
Slashers were beat to death and considered all but dead, but a script by up-and-coming screenwriter Kevin Williamson, originally titled Scary Movie, caught the attention of several studios, which incited a massive bidding war, but ultimately was picked up by the infamous Weinstein brothers to be released under their fledgling Dimension label. Their first release was Hellraiser 3, by the way, which is one of my personal favorite movies, thank you very much. Their only major success at that point was The Crow in 1994. Inspired by the real-life murders of the Gainesville Ripper, Kevin Williamson holed himself up for 3 days, and over the course of that 3 days took what was just a short treatment to a full-fledged script. Kevin Williamson was paid a whopping $400,000 for his script, and Scream hit the ground running. After a few speed bumps finding its director, Wes Craven, after initially passing on the script, accepted directing duties, and the film went on to gross over $87 million in its initial theatrical run, with a lifetime total of $173 million. Scream remained the highest grossing slasher of all time until Halloween 2018 knocked it off its proverbial slasher throne. Scream is one of many horror franchises to be resuscitated and revived for modern audiences. New movies from franchises like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Hellraiser, Wrong Turn, Halloween, Candyman, Saw, and of course Scream have been brought back to scare the shit out of all of us once again. So gather your friends and prepare for nostalgic overload as we prepare for the up-and-coming Scream 5 in just a few short days, but today we're here to discuss the 1996 classic Scream.
It's a Scream, baby! Hold on a sec. I'll be right back.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Justin here. As always, guys, thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me today. Today we're going to be talking about the 1996 slasher classic Scream. Pete, do you want to come up here, Bubba? You can come up here, buddy. There you go. As usual, Pete would not let me film unless he was 2 inches from my face, and now he's going to awkwardly stare at me while I film today's video, and that's okay. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. A year after the murder of her mother, Sidney Prescott is terrorized by a new killer who targets the girl and her friends by using horror films as part of a deadly game. So Scream is a movie that I grew up with. The movie was released in 1996. I was 14 years old when the original Scream movie came out. Yes, I'm that old. Now, although I wasn't able to catch Scream in the theaters, I wasn't quite old enough, and there was no way my parents were taking me to see this movie. They were a little strict on what young Justin watched when he was a kid, especially when it pertained to horror movies. Now, even though I wasn't able to see this at theaters, I look back fondly at the fact that I was able to rent this from my local video store, bring it home, pop it in the VCR, and watch it for the first time with a group of friends, and I just remember being blown away. This movie felt dangerous. It felt like something that I shouldn't be watching at the time. Although Scream at the time didn't compare to some of the more gory aspects of 80s slashers and creature features and body horror, the movie still had bite. It was still violent. It was still brutal in its kills. And over everything, it was creative. It was fresh. It felt different than anything we'd seen up until that point.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Now, before we get into everything that I love about this movie and what makes it stand out as so unique, we can't go any further without talking about that opening scene. In my personal opinion, even outside of the horror genre, just in cinema in general, it is one of the best opening scenes in cinema history. It's a full, almost 13-minute cold open scene with a massive, hugely famous star at the time, she's still famous, Drew Barrymore, killed off and never spoke of, never seen again. It's pretty incredible that they pulled that off. Drew Barrymore said in an interview, "I asked if I could be Casey Becker so that we could establish that rules do not apply in this film," she recalled. Drew Barrymore's heavily featured in the film's marketing, and you assume that she's going to be in the film, but she's not. She's killed off, and everything about this opening scene is just amazing. The first 12 to 13 minute cold opening that establishes everything you need to know about the rules and the tone of what Scream is going to be. We're gonna have a mass killer, we're gonna kill off a huge star within the first few minutes of the film, we're gonna reference horror directors and horror films and horror lore, show that this is a horror fan's horror film.
Yeah, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy, that's right. I like that movie. It was scary.
It set the tone for the audience that anything can happen, anybody can die at any point in time. It's just a perfect scene, and it's a perfect opening to Scream. Now, aside from that iconic and incredible opening scene, there are many factors that I feel set this movie apart from its counterparts of the 90s and even today. I feel like the writing and direction of Scream surpasses a lot of films coming out even today. I think a lot of people would agree with me there. But one of the main things that makes this slasher so different from other slashers is the mystery element. The misdirection, the whodunit aspect of Scream is so interesting.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
Every turn, every scene, every line, everything twists your perception and your prediction of who it might be. All these stings when a new actor enters the scene after a murder. It's so much fun. It seems like every new scene begins, especially scenes after something sinister happens, like a phone call or a murder. The next scene begins by a character bursting into the scene with a splash of music, and it just gives you the impression like, oh shit, is it him? It's gotta be him. Dropped the cell phone. He was just there at that location, and every new turn makes you think it could be somebody else.
He did it, Cindy! Please, I didn't do it. He did it, please.
Obviously, guys, before I go any further, we're going to be doing spoilers, so if that's not already clear, spoiler time. Now, going back and watching this movie more so than I did back in the day, it seems pretty obvious that Billy's the killer, but through the clever writing, they give you just enough benefit of the doubt and suspension of disbelief, just enough misdirects and red herrings to sort of keep you from fully accepting that it's Billy. They give you just enough benefit of the doubt that it could be somebody else, and it's just so clever. And I think by having a second killer was so brilliant in the writing to work off each other, to do all of these misdirects, being that they could have two killers in two different places at two different times. You can have somebody do a murder and have the other show up to sort of create this alibi. It was just perfect writing.
Couldn't have been me. I was in jail. Remember?
And speaking of the killers, the voice of Ghostface is so memorable and again, so iconic. Voice actor Roger Jackson absolutely knocked it out of the park.
What's your favorite scary movie?
It sounds menacing, it's playful yet sinister, the tone is just perfect. Voice actor Roger Jackson was actually doing these phone calls live on set. He was on set, although the cast didn't see him. They never saw him while they were filming these scenes, but they were speaking to him live, and I think that added to the tension. It just felt so real and in the moment because these scenes were filmed live. And another aspect of what makes Scream so timeless is this amazing cast. I can't imagine how much fun it was for all of these up-and-coming actors in the prime of their acting game, their youth, their careers.
And the best
Movie is...
I can't imagine how much fun it was for them to get this role and to just see the movie explode, all of them being at the top of their game and the peak of their fame. Neve Campbell was absolutely on fire at that time, coming off Party of Five. In '96, she had Scream and The Craft, and that just catapulted her into movies like Studio 54 and Wild Things. She was just killing it. Matthew Lillard with his frantic, energetic performance is just incredible. His first movie being Ghoulies Go to College in 1990. Serial Mom in 1994, which is my personal favorite Matthew Lillard role.
So happy I could shit.
Chip, you know how I hate the brown word.
He was in Mad Love, Hackers in '95, and that paved the way for Scream in '96. You had Courtney Cox in the height of her Friends fame. You had Skeet Ulrich, who was really incredible in this movie as Billy. He also starred with Neve Campbell in The Craft in that same year. Never really capturing that level of fame as he did in the first Scream movie, although he had a little comeback in the mid-2000s with Jericho, but he's fantastic as Billy. Jamie Kennedy as Randy is absolutely amazing in this movie. I always related to Randy. I always felt when I watched Scream, like in my friend group, I was the Randy of the group, the movie nerd. He did Romeo and Juliet and Scream in '96, so he was just killing it, and he's perfect in this role. Super energetic. All these actors are super energetic, but he was perfectly cast as Randy. And then you have Tatum, played by Rose McGowan, who is just adorable. The way she talks, her clothes in Scream is just so perfect. Before this, she had done Encino Man and a little movie in '95 called Doom Generation. If you haven't seen the Doom Generation, it's kind of hard to find. That movie is really crazy and she's amazing in it. I highly suggest checking that out.
Hey, no smoking here. You pick up.
Eat my fuck.
She's also another actress who I feel like never quite got her due. She's incredible in Planet Terror and Death Proof, but bummer what happened to her, especially in her personal life with Weinstein, but she's great as Tatum in Scream. Now this brings us to the immortal, the amazing, the incredibly genius director, Wes Craven. His sweeping camera movements, his knack for comedy and editing and timing, and the playful tone of this movie is all Wes Craven. His name and stamp is all over this series. And he did such an incredible job. The camera work and editing is just seamless in this movie, and you gotta think, to manage the tone of a movie like this would be incredibly difficult because you have a lot of comedy in this movie, but it also has its times where it's menacing, threatening, and honestly scary. To balance tone like that is incredibly difficult, and Wes Craven manages to do this perfectly. I love all the establishing shots that you see throughout this movie where, you know, every scene begins with these great sweeping camera movements, so you really feel like you're there. He photographs this town so well, and it just looks fantastic. And finally, you can't mention Scream without talking about the amazing score, which is almost a character in itself. Brian Tyler's score is amazing. I was disappointed to hear that he's not doing the score for the new movie, but the work that he did in the first 4 Scream movies is incredible. It's a little over the top, but it just fits, and you can't imagine watching Scream without all those over the top, ridiculous sound cues Brian Tyler created, and they're amazing. Sound design overall in this movie is great. One thing I noticed, everything in this movie is a little over the top, but you have the scene of Henry Winkler in the principal's office with those gigantic pair of scissors, like it sounds like swords clashing together.
2 of your fellow students. Did you show your compassion and sensitivity, huh? Let me show you something.
So revisiting Scream was an absolute pleasure to do. I really hoped when I pushed play on the movie, when I just rewatched it, that hopefully I would be able to recapture some of the excitement that I had the first time watching it, and I definitely did. This movie 100% holds up. It is every bit as exciting and good to watch as it was back in '96. R.I.P. Wes Craven. Lost a good one there. So guys, that is my full in-depth reviewspective of Scream 1996. I'll be reviewing every movie in the Scream franchise this week. I probably won't see Scream on Thursday, so my review for Scream, it'll be a little late. Probably Friday or Saturday is when I get that out, but I'll be reviewing every Scream movie in the franchise. So guys, I think we're done here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay weird. Remember to always be yourself, and I will see you in the next one.